everyone, and welcome to Real Life Talks. I'm your host, Yvonne Heath, author of the book Love Your Life to Death and founder of the I Just Showed Up movement. So joining me today in the studio is Amy Pritzker. Hello, Amy.
Hi, Yvonne.
Thank you so much for being here. This is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. We've met several times over the years because we are very passionate about helping people to live well and to die well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So you are with the, and I practice this, North Simcoe Muskoka Hospice Palliative Care Network.
That's right.
I did it.
It's fantastic.
Yes, fantastic. That is a mouthful.
Yeah, and it almost took up all of our time.
Yeah, we're done. Thank you for coming. So tell me what your role is at the network and what that means and what you bring to the community.
So my role is I'm the community engagement lead with the network, and essentially what my job is engaging the community as a whole, but specifically those parts of the community that are a little bit more marginalized.
Okay.
So the First Nation, Inuit, Métis, also the LGBTQ, the people with developmental disabilities, people from different ethnicities and immigrants and that type of thing, Francophone. People who, in communities where they access to the mainstream healthcare system has been a little bit difficult for them sometimes,
Yes.
and sometimes they haven't had the best experiences. And so really knowing that sometimes we have been a barrier for them accessing that care, and especially with hospice palliative care, because you know that impacts how not only how they live, but how they die. And we want to make sure that people have access to hospice and to this wonderful thing that we call palliative care at all points in time. And
yes. Just hearing this, it just makes me so happy to know that this is being given a voice, because all the people that you're speaking of are a part of our society and deserve to live well and to die well. And sadly, sometimes we have our blinders on. We're busy in our lives and we don't really see the true picture of what is going on. And there are many people that fall through the cracks.
Inordinate amounts. So one of the challenges that we know, and that is really gaining speed, is the concept of the social determinants of health. Okay. And so we know that these social components like housing and education and income all play into how the quality of life. But what we don't really pay attention to is that those things have a life course perspective. So if I don't live well, then that impacts how I die. Yes. And when I die, and where I die. So there's a whole continuum here where it's all, we pay so much attention to healthcare in terms of disease management, but not in terms of doing things preventively and socially in order to do that preventive piece. Like we know that, and there's studies that are coming out every day about the fact that loneliness is now a key indicator that's leads to premature death, right?
Yes.
Like we know
is that significant, loneliness?
Well, now they're showing that it's as significant as smoking, right?
Wow. So, oh my goodness, I did not know that.
Yeah, I can't cite this source.
No, but
yeah.
But in loneliness, even it's just such you cannot live well and be lonely, and it's very sad because there are many people living in silos of silence and isolation, and they don't reach out, and we don't reach out to them. Because we're busy and maybe we don't know what our neighbor is doing. And that's another thing I say, I'm very passionate about saying to people, we need to know our neighbors. We need to get back to that sense of community, not just at the celebrations, not even just at the funerals.
Yeah.
Day-to-day life.
Absolutely.
Day-to-day life. We need to step up as community because it can't just be left to healthcare.
Well, one of the challenges I think that we've got in our society is that we really value our independence and we value privacy. And those things aren't bad, but taken to an extreme, they can be detrimental to our health. So the whole concept of, I don't want to bother anyone, or the concept of that's their business and I can't get involved. And one of the challenges we also have as Canadians especially is the fact that we don't like to ask for help.
We really don't. We feel like we're heroes. Oh, no, thank you. I'm good. I said, let's forget the polite conversation. Amy, how are you doing? I'm fine, thank you. If you need anything, let me know. And we feel like that's as far as it needs to go. And yet that person is suffering but doesn't want to impose.
Absolutely. And one of the challenges we have is that and when I used to do bereavement support for people and offer a safe space for them, every time that someone would meet with me, they burst into tears and apologize for it.
Oh my, Canadians we're apologizers, aren't we?
Well, and especially when it comes to crying. And I always use the analogy, I'm like, if someone were to lose it on me and to get angry at me, I don't get people apologizing to me for that. But I do get people apologizing for crying in front of me, for being vulnerable.
Yes.
And, and one of the other challenges that we have is that not only is it difficult for us to ask for help, but sometimes the onus is on the person who needs help to identify what their needs are. And I have to tell you that when I'm stressed or sick or whatever,
or grieving,
I can't even think straight. So
right.
Putting that impetus on me and the responsibility on me to identify what it is I need.
Oh my goodness!
Is
huge.
It's huge, and it just feels. And that's a reason why people often don't accept help, is that they can't even think straight.
No.
So you're asking me to do something even more than what I've already got going on.
Oh, that is so huge, because I say to people all the time, when I'm grieving in crisis, it's like the wires aren't touching. I can't think. I don't know what I need. But here's the thing that we do need. We need people to just show up, because we don't always need a professional, but we still, the daily tasks of life still need to be done. So maybe just do something, right? Just come over and say, I'm just going to be here shoveling your walk. I am going to rake your grass. You don't need a professional for that, do you?
No, exactly. And one of the challenges, or not challenges, but one of the things that we always say to people is that if I'm doing something anyways, why don't you just go and do it for somebody else as well, right? So if I'm already shoveling my driveway, it's not a big deal for me to go over to my next door neighbor and say, you know what, I'm already out doing this. Can I do this for you?
Yes.
Or just checking in on people, right?
Checking in, running to the store.
Right.
Oh, I'm going to the grocery store. What do you need?
Yep.
What do you need?
Yep.
It's funny because I said, as I've been on this journey of helping people to just show up and be there for each other, and we need to get back to that sense of community, I realized even in my own life, I might not know that I have a neighbor 2 doors down who has been chronically ill for years, or in the dying process, which is also a process. It's not always just a quick thing. And I thought, wow, I'm even guilty of this. And so I made it a point to reach out to neighbors, and lo and behold, Jordy and I ended up supporting this wonderful man and his wife in his final journey, and we really made a big difference. We didn't show up as professionals, we just showed up as caring neighbors.
Well, and I think that one of the things that was facing us is that the trajectory and how we die changes through the years. And while our system right now is set up for a certain trajectory, mostly the cancer trajectory, where you have an illness, you have treatment, you're seen by a gazillion different people, and then you have a really rapid decline in death. Right now, we're facing aging baby boomers, and what's going to be facing us is frailty.
Okay.
And so we call it there's a nurse practitioner who calls it the dwindles, where rather than having this significant decline in health, it's just an ebbing. And it's a thing. All of a sudden your health declines, but it's so subtle that sometimes it goes off people's radar.
Don't even really notice, oh, Joe's not out as much as he used to be.
Exactly. So it does take a community to recognize, oh yeah, he's not out as much as he used to be.
Yes.
And the same nurse practitioner who named it the dwindles, had her own issues with her family, where her parents were so private that they didn't even know that their health had declined to that extent. And so it is a bit of more community, more friends checking in, rather than healthcare providers emerge flagging it or doctors flagging it, because we can't count on that.
We can't count on that. And truly, I believe that we are each other's responsibility, and the more you care, we feel like we're too busy, but we're just talking about, if you're going for a walk and your neighbor lives by themselves, just knock, say, I would say, Joe, just thought I'd stop in for a cup of tea. How are you doing? 15 minutes can make all the difference.
And not even 15 minutes. It could be like a 5 minute.
5 minutes.
Just checking, and getting to know who is in that person's tribe.
Right.
So if they have kids, so that I think that that's an important thing. I live alone, so it's important for me to let people know who's in my tribe, so that if something happens to me,
Yes.
or I fall off the radar, that they know who to contact, and they will have my network all figured out.
That's so important also. And often we have family and friends that live far away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or your friends love you, but they work full time, or they have small children. That's great if they would be there for you, but can they be?
Yeah.
That's the other question. Can they be? And that's where that sense of neighborhood and knowing your neighbors, or at least, checking in and being able to call that person's daughter, that person's mom, if something changes. We just need to get our radars out a little more, be more aware. It doesn't have to be grand gestures.
No, and that's the piece of it, is that everything feels like an extra effort these days.
Yes.
But if we just looked up from our phones for 5 seconds and said, oh, there's a person in front of me, I think that we would be a little bit further. Now, I'm all for technology, because it helps me to keep in touch with my friends who are far away. But that can't be the be-all, end-all of my community.
That's right.
Because when push comes to shove, I live in the here and now, and that's in a very physical place. It's not just in the internet world, right?
Right. So a couple things I want to talk about. When people hear, once again, there's still hospice and palliative care.
Right.
People are starting to understand more and more. But I was just in California, and my sister's neighbor was talking about her mother, who was 98 and failing.
Yeah.
Okay, 98 and failing, and had been. And I said, just matter-of-factly, because I forget that people don't understand this, and I said, oh, is palliative care involved? And she said, well, I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're there yet. And so that's something I just am so passionate about. What is palliative care and hospice, and when should that be initiated?
Well, I think this is one of the big questions that has existed in hospice palliative care since its inception in the late 60s. And because we have infighting even amongst ourselves about what is hospice palliative care.
Yes.
Is it a program? Is it a place? People think of hospice only as a place, a building. And the reality is that it's a philosophy of care.
Yes.
And really it is about holistic care for the whole person and their family and their tribe. So when we talk about it, it's really about acknowledging that people are more than the physical, that they're more than a disease, that they have a spiritual life, that they have a relational life, emotional life, and integrating that into the person's care. So technically, if you want to go with the World Health definition of what hospice palliative care is, it goes from point of diagnosis with an illness all the way through to, and includes death and bereavement.
Right.
But we also know that with hospice palliative care, when it's integrated early in someone's life trajectory or early on in their disease, that really improves quality of life, and sometimes they get better.
Yes,
so,
many times actually, yes.
Yeah, and so we have had people who've been discharged from residential hospices because with, again, going to the social determinants of health, with a roof over their head, proper food, not being isolated, they get better. And one of the challenges we have is that we know, especially with people who are precariously housed or vulnerably housed, that that's the reality. And if we could just implement that care all the way along, rather than waiting for them to be ill.
Yes. With our community, with our neighbors, our coworkers, our family, and our friends all checking in. So the burden isn't on just one person. It's not all just the healthcare system.
And we don't have to wait till the end, right?
No.
And so I think that is a huge piece of it.
It is.
Another huge piece for me about hospice palliative care is people don't understand that suffering is more than physical.
Yes.
So we want a pill for everything. So I can't tell you how many times people came to me grieving and were like, I just want something to make it go away. And I'm like, there's no magic pill.
Yeah, yes.
And unfortunately, with other modalities, that's what we look at doing, right? Medicine and just doing pain and symptom management. Well, sometimes our pain is existential.
Loneliness is painful.
Yeah, having regrets is painful. Not being able to say things to loved ones and have that closure, that can be a huge burden. So sometimes we need to take a different angle, and that's what hospice palliative care with its interdisciplinary team approach can provide to people.
Yes.
So it's not uncommon for the 98-year-old to be thinking, I'm not going to be needing end-of-life care, but That's not what hospice palliative care is.
No.
So it is about
So
that
important.
whole trajectory.
Yes, and palliative care, when you have a life-limiting disease, right? It isn't a death sentence. Like people, oh, why would I'm not ready for palliative care. So, well, perhaps if you met with the team and they assessed you and they see what your needs are, they help with pain medication, they look at the whole, they look at you mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually.
Exactly.
And if you don't need palliative care right now, as they again think, well, at least you've met the team and you have comfort with what it means. It is a philosophy of let's have the greatest quality of life.
And sometimes people, I go to one of my clients who came in, and they came in at the beginning of their trajectory. So she had just gotten a diagnosis, and they want some information.
Yes.
They just were like, what does this whole thing mean for us? What resources are out there so that we don't want you to be involved along the whole way. They were very clear about that. But we want to know how we can access you when we need you.
Amazing.
And it was amazing. So they came in at the beginning, they came in along the way, and then at the end we were able to support their spouse at the end through bereavement.
Oh.
And because they had a knowledge of the resources, they had control then about being able to say, I know that the support is out there.
Yes.
And I can access it, and it's back in my court.
When I'm ready.
When I'm ready.
We are
Yeah,
ready.
exactly.
Right? And that's my whole thing. Let's have these conversations before the need arrives, right? The time when you're in crisis and grieving is not the time to figure out what the resources are.
No, absolutely not.
It's the worst time.
It is.
It is the worst time.
Yeah.
So let's get all our ducks in a row. Okay, so let's figure out, oh, hospice palliative care. Here's the number. I've spoken to Amy. I've spoken, this is wonderful. And it's still our journey, but the support is there when and if we need it.
And that's part of the piece of advanced care planning, right? Is that people mix up the concept of goals of care with advanced care planning. And really, advanced care planning is about knowing who is your substitute decision maker.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many times I go into a presentation and people are like, I ask, do you have a substitute decision maker? And people are like, no, I don't. Well, everyone in Ontario does according to the law.
Right. Okay. It just might not be the person you wish it was. Is that?
Well, it's defined through a hierarchy.
Oh, right. Okay.
So
yes.
there's
Explain that.
yes. So in terms of even healthcare consent, we do such a poor job of educating people about what their rights are, what the process looks like, and the fact that, okay, so we do have substitute decision maker hierarchy. And in Ontario, that means that and we think of it as next of kin, right? But that's not the correct terminology. That's not the correct framework.
Okay.
So if I am ill, it's going to go in, I don't have a power of attorney for personal care. That's a legal document that says that I've chosen
Yes,
who's going to be my substitute decision maker. But if I haven't done that, then it would go to my spouse or partner, or then my parent or child, or then my siblings. So it goes down this waterfall effect.
And maybe they don't want to do this, or they're ill-prepared to do this.
Totally. And sometimes it would put them in a situation where they would have what we call moral distress. So they'd be asked to be doing something that they are totally not comfortable with. But the other thing that we have happen is that people even do a power of attorney document to appoint someone as their substitute decision maker and don't tell the person.
Oh my goodness. They don't tell the person that they've appointed?
No. So the person doesn't know that they are going to be making decisions for someone.
So they don't know exactly, they haven't had the talk about saying, this is what I'd like you to do.
Not only haven't they had the talk, they don't even know that they should be having the talk.
Oh dear.
And so, and we take for granted, right, about that person will just know what to do in that situation. Well, will they?
Oh, yes. And again, they're grieving, they're feeling anxious, and what if other people in the family have different ideas, or what do you mean? What do you mean you're the power of attorney? That's not what I know. Mom didn't want that. Why would you do that to people?
And that
why would you do that to people? That's terrible.
It is really messy, and I think that you can attest to that, and I can attest to that, and how it kind of plays out.
Well, fractures families beyond repair,
for sure,
much of the time.
For sure, yeah. And so you can alleviate much of that, not all of it, because we all know that there's dynamics, but you can alleviate much of that through having these conversations ahead of time, and also being very clear about the fact of who not only you want to be your substitute decision maker, but who you want to be in your tribe. So I had a friend who, off the cuff, was joking one time and just said, "Oh yeah, Amy, you're on my team if something happens to me." And I'm like, "But you didn't tell me."
Right.
This is good to know now,
yes,
but
thanks for letting me know.
Yeah. But having that conversation, but what if they expected me to do something I wasn't comfortable with again?
Yes.
Or I wasn't up to. So these are the things of really thinking through, who am I going to be able to call at 3 o'clock in the morning when I need somebody?
Yes.
Who's going to be able to walk my dog? Who do I know would have the information I need? The other challenge we have in our age is passwords. So people don't think about all those things.
Millions of passwords.
And information that just is out there. And so what plans have I taken to make sure that that information is accessible to the people who need it when they need it? You don't want to give it to them too early, but at the same time, you want to know them to know these are the bank accounts I've got. These are this is what I want to happen to my social media. Those are our huge questions right now, right?
Well, that's our world.
That is our world.
That is our world, and we need to. Once again, if we can think about these things before, instead of when we leave it, then people are trying to crack codes, and there's so much. That's the piece I'm addressing, the excessive suffering. We have to grieve.
Yeah.
That's how we heal. That's how we have to grieve, and grieving is a natural part of this journey, absolutely. But we create a lot of our excessive suffering.
For sure.
When people say, well, I don't want to talk about that, it's, well, I'm sorry, that's a little selfish.
Well,
it's selfish.
And it's also that it's painful regardless. So either you're choosing to be having it within your control, or you're adding, like you had said, another layer of stress on top of it already loaded. Yeah, it's a loaded topic.
Yes.
And so it is, maybe you just need to do it over wine. It's like
whatever it takes. Yeah. Whatever it takes. And I think another really big part of the problem, which Five Any saying it, I'm going to do something about it, is that no one is responsible for implementing or doing end-of-life plans, whereas we just need to normalize that that's your responsibility. Why does your doctor or lawyer or the Speak Up campaign, which is wonderful, talking about how we need to do advanced care plans, why have we not normalized the fact that we all live and we all die, and it is each and every one of our own responsibility to plan our life and end of life?
Well, I think one of the things that has happened is that, like I had said before, the way that we die has changed. Yeah. So it used to be that we died from tuberculosis or some kind of illness, and so it wasn't quite a planned thing. There wasn't a lot of planning to go into that. Then people died of an acute experience, so heart attack, stroke.
Right.
Again, not a lot of planning to go into this.
Sure.
Now we have all these medical interventions.
Yes.
That we have
people living for a very long time.
That involve decisions. And this whole concept of healthcare consent, where do I have all the information I need from my healthcare providers to make the best, most informed decision that's in alignment with my values.
With my values.
But we're not teaching our kids about what this law means about healthcare consent.
No.
So we're not teaching ourselves about that. We don't even know that. I didn't even know that existed until I went into the field. So without that information out there, putting it back onto the people's, it's everyone's responsibility. It's not just the individual consumer of the healthcare system. It's also the doctors taking the initiative to say, you know what, this is your choice, but I'm going to give you all the information that you need to make an informed decision in alignment with your values. But we're just, as a whole, we're not doing a great job of this.
No, Amy, what is the best, what is the next best step that we can take to, because we need to change now. I mean, we have aging baby boomers. Our healthcare system is in crisis.
For sure.
It is not up to the healthcare system alone. We need to address this as community. What is the next best step for us, and where's the best place people can get information if they want to take the reins?
Well, we do have the Speak Up Ontario website for advanced care planning and healthcare consent, and I would redirect people there. One of the other things people don't realize is that every province has a different legal framework when it comes to healthcare consent and advanced care planning. So we had in the past, we had documents from BC, California, Maryland, Australia. I've seen information, and it's really important that people go along with what is provincially for us.
Yes.
Correct information.
Right, absolutely. So the Speak Up campaign, people can get information there. We'll put the website there.
Yeah.
So just to kind of wrap things up, I would love to hear just a wonderful story. I know I have millions of hundreds of stories, and so do you, of how a community supports someone at end of life and the difference they can make.
Well, I think that there's a number of ways that they can, and I think that sometimes it takes creative ways of interacting. We did have support a homeless gentleman last year as he was in his dying process.
Yes.
And he had chosen to be homeless, not homeless, precariously housed.
Yeah.
He wanted to live life on his own terms, and live off the grid. So supporting him through that was really an interesting and challenging experience for us, but it really meant that the community came together. We had people from Salvation Army who would go and bring him food, check on him, and really at the we had a motel owner who opened up the motel room and gave a discounted rate, made sure that they were taken care of. This laundry was done regularly. Healthcare providers did come in, but there was volunteers from all different sectors. His friends from random thrift shops that he'd go to. And so it was really about a community effort to say, what is it that would be meaningful to you? And we did have people who challenged us when we tried to support him in what his wishes were, because they said, at what point in time can we just take him to a hospital?
Take him to the hospital. He doesn't want to go to the hospital.
He doesn't want to go to the hospital. So I'm like, you can't.
No,
he has the ability
to
make these decisions. He still has a capable mind. He knows what the risks are, the benefits, what the outcomes can be.
And I have no doubt he died well.
He died the way he wanted to, where he wanted to.
Well, and what more could we ask for? It takes a village to support the ill, the caregiver, the dying, the bereaved, and each other.
Exactly.
And we can do better. Amy, there's so much information. We could have a whole day show, couldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
We could, but thank you so much for being here. I know you have a very busy schedule. Thank you for all that you do for the community. It's really near and dear to my heart. Thanks you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yes,
Thanks.
I appreciate it. So this has been Real Life Talks. These are shows about learning how to just show up for yourself, just show up for others, and to be empowered and resilient in life, grief, and end of life. So my call to action, if you want to just show up, you want to be empowered and resilient, plan your life, plan your death, and then just love your life to death. And always bring your own tambourine to the party. Thanks. Bye for now.